Remember we talked last week about Speaker Mike Johnson talking about the FBI and Donald Trump? I was wondering, I said, am I the crazy person that's not looking to just let this go?
There was a significant event this week in which this committee has jurisdiction over. The Speaker of the House, the third highest ranking U.S. official, third in line to be the president, looked into the TV cameras and told us that the current president of the United States was an FBI informant. I consider that to be gigantic news. And I'm just curious, have we reached out to the FBI, to Kash Patel, to confirm whether the president was at any time an FBI informant? I only say that because the Speaker of the House obviously gets significant briefings. He gets briefings that we do not get as regular members. And so I think this is something that we need to hear definitively. Before Kash Patel comes, we should clear up. Maybe that we should send a letter to him to find out if the president was an informant. And if he was an informant, is that because he was working with the FBI after he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein? Did he turn because he got caught with Jeffrey Epstein? You know, when you're an FBI informant, there are lots of questions about how you became an FBI informant. And then how long was he an FBI informant? When did his service to the FBI stop? You know, being a member of the deep state? When did he stop doing that?
Judge Moskowitz asked these questions with this level of sarcasm, but it all actually makes sense. You don't just walk up and call the FBI and go, "Hey, FBI, I'd like to be an informant." I think someone got on that plane, and then you're suddenly an FBI informant. We just moved right along afterwards because when people called out Mike Johnson and his extreme lie over that whole thing, he ran up to Manu Raju and whispered into this microphone.
What do you mean by that?
All right. What I was referring to in that long conversation was what the victim's attorney said. More than a decade ago, President Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, and he was one of the only people, one of the only prominent people, as everyone has reported, not President Trump, but everybody about him, that he was willing to help law enforcement go after this guy who was a disgusting child abuser, sex trafficker, all the allegations. That's what they heard. So the president was helpful in that. I don't know if I use the right terminology, but that's common knowledge, and everybody knows that. So this is much ado about nothing.
Did the president tell you this specifically about his involvement?
I was recounting what others have said. The president and I have talked about the Epstein evils many times. He's as disgusted by it as everybody else. He has long had a history of acknowledging that, and he has said repeatedly he wants everything to come out, all credible information, everything for the American public to decide.
Was he ever asked to wear a wire or anything like that?
I have no idea. No, I'm not saying that. I have no information about that whatsoever. I was repeating what has been common knowledge for a long time. The president was helpful in trying to get Epstein, for the law enforcement to go after Epstein. That's always been my understanding. That's common knowledge. It's the public's understanding. I was not breaking news there, okay? What I'm trying to emphasize is that the president is as disgusted about this as everyone is, all people of good conscience.
Do you really believe that Mike Johnson doesn't know the difference between someone who says, "Hey, I have a tip for you," versus being an FBI informant? An FBI informant, maybe he used the wrong terminology. Maybe Mike Johnson doesn't know the difference between informant and tipster. Everyone knows if you have to kick, as he said, Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, then you're close with him. Why would you be just this small tipster who somehow a little bit helps? And if Donald Trump wasn't an informant, but then helped extensively, he said he's not breaking any news. If he helped extensively with this investigation, what did he help with? What did he tell? How was the FBI informed from Donald Trump, who knew Jeffrey Epstein and said he was his close friend, who signed his birthday book, who had explicit, suggestive images in that birthday book? What kind of things could he tell him? Donald Trump has been in front of cameras already talking about how he knows that Larry Summers and that Bill Clinton and all these people have been on the plane and been to the island. Did he tell the FBI this? Hey, where's the records? You know, Mike, how you can give us those records of all the things that Donald Trump told them? He can release those files that you're still hiding, those files that you keep saying are moot and we don't need to release them. He doesn't care that everyone sees that he's lying. He's just going to talk long enough until people start snoozing and go, "Okay, Mike, shut the fuck up. I get it. You're not saying anything. I understand. Do you know what's now happening? That same Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, and as in some of the victims say, the lead person in this child sex trafficking ring, it has now been revealed that many emails were communicated between her and Epstein well after they said that they've separated and they're no longer talking about this stuff. Similarly, to the way that Donald Trump said he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, as Mike Johnson likes to say.
Simone, you and I were talking before we began, and I said that the Bloomberg reporting didn't much surprise me because although these were several thousand emails from a Yahoo account owned by Jeffrey Epstein, we have seen emails between the two of them in civil litigation, emails that have been unsealed. And one of them that has stuck with me that I have a picture of in my phone because it bothered me so much was Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein talking about Virginia Giuffre. She is perhaps the most famous victim and unfortunately died by suicide earlier this year. In 2015, I just want to pause there because that is a decade plus after Ghislaine Maxwell is telling Todd Blanche her work for Jeffrey Epstein has mostly wrapped up. This is the conversation that they have from Epstein to Maxwell. You can issue a reward to any of Virginia's friends, acquaintances, family that come forward and help prove her allegations are false. And then he continues to detail what he thinks are her strongest or most damaging allegations, and there are two of them. But the fact that they are having that conversation in 2015 as Ghislaine Maxwell is involved in a defamation lawsuit against Virginia Giuffre, Jeffrey Epstein behind the scenes, still at that point uncharged by the Southern District of New York, telling Ghislaine Maxwell secretly, you can pay money to people who say that Virginia is lying.
Isn't it weird how these liars, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now again in that minimum security prison spa camp at the behest of Donald Trump, who said that, I may even pardon her. Let's not forget where we are. Despite all the talk about Charlie Kirk, let's come back to the important stuff. So as we're seeing this now unfold, how long these folks continue to communicate in order to downplay and silence victims, witnesses, anybody else that could have known things about this. But these emails show just how extensive these conversations were still had when the dude was already busted, had been busted for a while, had apparently been kicked out of Mar-a-Lago so many years ago, but they're still coordinating their messaging and how they're going to get free of this. There was a Bloomberg article that she pointed out. I read some of it. The emails, part of a cache of more than 18,000 obtained by Bloomberg News, show that Maxwell and Epstein were closer in many respects than either publicly admitted. Maxwell opened at least one. This is some good details. Maxwell opened at least one foreign bank account using one of his addresses, was a named director on one of his main revenue generating companies, and traded stock in a company they were both invested in. Details that haven't been previously reported. The pair discussed undergoing a shared fertility procedure long after Maxwell claims she was largely disassociated from him. They corresponded about discrediting women who raised allegations against him. That was the one that I think Ruben was talking about there, including in one exchange where Maxwell said she planned to circulate compromising information on one of his sexual abuse victims. If you're that FBI informant named Donald Trump, maybe you want to continue to, release some of this information. The reasons why maybe these emails they didn't want to come forward is because there's more details like these. The emails include a spreadsheet itemizing nearly 2,000 gifts, luxury items, and payments totaling $1.8 million, with donations indicating that they were intended for Epstein's friends, his business associates, and victims. The spreadsheet, which was created by one of Epstein's accountants, included a $35,000 watch that was earmarked for former Bill Clinton aide, a $71,000 purchase at a Lexus dealership for one of his attorneys, which I think we heard about one of those guys, and other items such as lingerie and chocolates, some for teenage girls who later lodged sexual abuse complaints against Epstein and Maxwell. The spreadsheet indicates that Maxwell helped Epstein arrange many of those items, but it doesn't specify whether the intended recipients were ever offered or actually received those gifts, or accepted them. The depth of which they were looking to make sure this wasn't going to come forward, or to the extent even after he was busted to come forward, was constant. There's so many things that they're covering up. There's so many names. Why were all those gifts being given to people? Who was being kept silent? It was a story I did a week or two ago, maybe just only a week and a half ago. where they suppressed information about who Jeffrey Epstein sent six-figure paychecks to people to shut the fuck up. Who were those people? You know what? Maybe we should ask that FBI informant, Donald Trump, the guy who knew enough about Epstein to be an FBI informant, according to Mike Johnson, but didn't know enough about Jeffrey Epstein to know anything that was going on. Did you guys know this? This has been happening the past couple of days when we're paying attention to other things. Democrat James Walkinshaw just won the special election for Virginia's 11th congressional district. He won it in a landslide, bro. 76% of the vote. So he just signed on to that petition that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey were putting forward to release more of these files. This is in the House. So they need one more signature. I wonder if there's any Republicans, one more Republican, that's willing to sign on to this discharge petition to release these files. The Law and Order Party needs one more person that's in favor of law and order to be a part of releasing these files. But did you guys realize this happened? Because we keep talking about the House. What about the Senate? Those Senate Republicans defeated an effort just 2 days ago by Democrats to insert language into Congress's annual defense authorization bill that would have forced the public release of these case files on this Jeffrey Epstein case. So now the Senate is covering for it directly. The Senate voted 51 to 49 to dismiss these changes to the bill. And Republican Senators Hawley of Missouri and Rand Paul of Kentucky joined with these Democrats in looking to get it released. So, good on them for that. Let's tell you some of the names who decided to put their fucking faces in front of cameras and say that I'm all for covering up for child sex traffickers. And remember their names and anything else that they talk about and realize that they're covering for pedophiles. Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota said, this is not the right way to do it. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said earlier this week that the Justice Department has already released tons of files. Hey, John, Mike Johnson already gave us that bullshit excuse and nobody's buying it. And he went on to say, I trust them in terms of having the confidence that they'll get as much information out there as possible in a way that protects the rights of the victims. And the worst part is, even in July, John Thune gave this answer to Brett Baier on Fox News about whether or not this stuff should be released. See if you can find an answer in this word salad.
Where are you? I mean, does this split the Republican Party?
Well, I think at some point, Brett, there's going to have to be a resolution. And again, the president is the leader of the party. And a lot of those constituents out there who are giving voice to wanting to get more information are his supporters. And so, but I think, yes, we're all interested in making sure that we get that justice is served and that there is full disclosure and there's transparency around this.
Those are just, promises. I think we're all focused on getting this full disclosure and all that surrounding it. What are you going to do about that? I want to let you guys know that we're focused on it. So does your focus lead to action? Does your focus lead to just telling us you've got to focus and your actions are doing things like that was in July to what he just did now in September of blocking the release or the amendment that Democrats put forward to add that to a vote that they know they're all going to vote on. Politicians do that all the time to make sure that they release these. Why is that not a bipartisan approach and a goal of theirs? He's focused on it. That is until he has to do something to prove that he's focused on it. John Thune is actively covering up for pedophiles. If he's not, he should prove me wrong. Because he can do the opposite. He can do this thing. He could vote and make it 50-50 and then lead J.D. Vance to be the one to say, I'm sorry, I'm covering for pedophiles.